everyone wants to be a part of something. To be accepted by others is a primal coping mechanism that humans as a species crave. Social constructs forged through thousands of years have taught us to gather in packs for protection and strength for the betterment of the herd. In modern times, those instincts are still strong, but the logical mind allows us to think for ourselves and create our own path. There are people, however, who still need that belonging and will seek it from groups who have radical and sometimes insane ways of thinking that fool the person into believing their fabricated truths. Formerly known as cults, some are just people who don't agree with modern methods due to religion, so they choose to live a more simple and reserved lifestyle than that of today's climate. Then you have the radical groups that push a false idea of truth onto an easily persuaded mind. It only gets crazier from here, so stick around as we cover the top 10 craziest cults. Before we dive into the video, take a moment to subscribe and turn on notifications, or don't and not be cool. Number 10. Nexium. One of the most recently publicized groups, Nexium had been brought up on charges of sex trafficking while claiming to be a multi-level marketing company. Based in Clifton Park, New York, an Albany suburb, the group claimed to sell personal and professional development seminars in their programs. Founded in 1998 by Keith Rainier, early retractors who had joined the so-called marketing company described the business as a cult-like program aimed at breaking down his subjects psychologically and inducting them into bizarre ritualistic practices. 2018 brought about federal allegations when it was discovered that the group was branding women and forcing them to restrict their diets. After Rainier was arrested in Mexico, where he fled in light of the charges, the following months revealed an even more disgusting truth. Hollywood star Allison Mack, most famously known for playing Chloe Sullivan on the superhero TV series Smallville, was an active member of the group who groomed women into joining. Crazy enough, women in the group were the ones brainwashing other impressionable women to join the group, fully aware of the horrors they would have to endure. Keith Rainier, as of October 2020, has been sentenced to 120 years in federal prison for the heinous crimes committed. Number 9. School of Prophets. Utah is home to the highest concentration of Mormons than anywhere else in the country. Belonging to this religious sect was a man by the name of Dan Lafferty, a well-known chiropractor and serving elder in his church. In 1984, Dan claimed to have had a revelation from God and was told that 4 people must be removed from Earth to make way for the second coming of Christ. Dan was a part of a renegade polygamous cult called the School of Prophets, and it just so happens that one of the so-called 4 people to be removed from Earth was his brother's wife Brenda, who disagreed with Dan on the ideals of the cult and polygamy. On July 24th of the same year, Dan and his other brother Ronald walked into the apartment complex where their brother and his wife lived, along with their 15-month-old child. After barging into the apartment with a 10-inch boning knife, Brenda's fate, along with that of her babies, would be sealed. Fortunately, the other 2 people who would have been killed weren't in town as they were on vacation. Following the murders, the brothers were arrested and tried in court, where Dan got placed on death row and died in 2019, almost 40 years later. As for Ronald, he's actively serving a life sentence for connection to the murders. Number 8. Angel's Landing. Located on a rural 20-acre property near Wichita, Kansas, lie a commune that went by the name Angel's Landing. The founder and leader of the group, Daniel Perez, had convinced his followers that he had magical powers. He told them he was a 1,000-year-old seer that in order to stay alive, he must perform inappropriate acts with young children. It's crazy that anyone would believe this story and not immediately report him to the police, but we guess he must have been a good salesman to pitch such an outlandish story. Perez tormented small children for over a decade without being caught. One of the more unfortunate women in the commune, Patricia Hughes, had been killed by Perez in a drowning in which the commune lied for him to investigators. Only years later, after an ex-Angel's Landing member came forward and told police what had actually happened, did they finally understand how Daniel had so much money without working. He was using the life insurance of the commune members to live lavishly and planned to use more so he could continue his lifestyle. Perez was convicted in 2015 and is currently serving 2 life sentences. Number 7. Heaven's Gate. This far-out cult was led by Marshall Applewhite, who after surviving a near-death experience in 1972 was recruited into the group by one of his nurses, Bonnie Lou Nettles. In 1975, Applewhite and Nettles convinced a group of 20 people from Oregon to abandon their families and move to eastern Colorado, where they promised that an extraterrestrial spacecraft would take them to the kingdom of heaven. When the spacecraft never arrived, the group diminished, and in 1985, Bonnie Lou Nettles died. In the early 90s, the cult resurfaced and Applewhite went to work recruiting new members. Shortly after the discovery of the Halley-Bopp comet, members of Heaven's Gate became convinced that an alien spacecraft was on its way to Earth, shielded behind the comet to prevent human detection. In October of 1996, Applewhite rented a large mansion in Rancho Santa Fe, explaining to the owner that the group was made up of Christian-based angels. In March 1997, as Hale-Bopp reached its closest distance to Earth, Applewhite and the 38 Heaven's Gate members drank a lethal cocktail of phenobarbital and vodka in the hopes of leaving their bodies and entering the spacecraft they believed to be behind the comet. Number 6. Children of God. In 1968, a group was founded by preacher David Berg called Teens for Christ. The group targeted young runaways and hippies to teach them about God, or so they thought. Quickly evolving into the Children of God, the cult had 15,000 members worldwide with hundreds of communes. Berg's church combined the worship of Christ with 60s-era free love and preached the normal cult leader prophecies. A known practice of the commune was something called flirty fishing. Commanded by Berg, women of the group would go out and recruit men to bring them into the cult as new members. Joaquin Phoenix famously lived in this commune as a child, and when the flirty fishing came about, suggesting his mother helped the cause, she along with Joaquin's father were disgusted and decided to leave. Many members who faced torment as children have sadly taken their lives, and believe it or not, the commune still operates today under the name The Family International. Number 5. Aum Shinrikyo. Formed in Japan in the 1980s, Aum was originally formed as a spiritual group that mixed Hindu and Buddhist beliefs, later adopting Christian doomsday prophecies. The founder Shoko Asahara claimed himself to be Christ and the first enlightened one since Buddha. Picking up a sizable following, by 1989 the group was recognized as a religious organization and had tens of thousands of followers worldwide. Many of the followers in Japan were students at elite universities who came from academically pressured backgrounds and were studying for pressured careers. Gradually becoming a paranoid doomsday cult, members began to kidnap, injure, and even kill opponents of the group. On the 20th of March 1995, the group rigged Japanese metro trains with 5 bags of the liquid nerve agent sarin. In total, 13 people died and over 5,800 were injured in the 5 attacks spread out through 3 trains. It remains the worst domestic terrorist attack to take place on Japanese soil. Aum plotted the attack to bring about nuclear warfare between Japan and the United States in an effort to end the world. In 2018, Asahara and 12 other members were hanged and the group became outlawed in Japan. Number 4. Order of the Solar Temple. It was once believed that only poor, uneducated people were drawn to the lure of cults, but the Order of the Solar Temple proved otherwise. Comprising only socially elite members, the cult had a steep fee for admission. Established in Geneva, Switzerland in 1984, the group's 2 leaders, Joseph Di Mambro and Luc Jarrett, had deceived the members into paying the expensive admissions so they could live lavish lifestyles. They spoke of apocalyptic events that were soon to come and how after the world ends they would be transported to the planet orbiting Sirius to live out an afterlife. Matters in the group became tense when Di Mambro's own son started questioning the integrity of the cult after he found evidence of spiritual visions being fabricated by projectors. As members started investigating the allegations, they discovered just how lavishly Di Mambro and Jarrett were living, and in turn many left. Fearful that they'd lose the rest of their following, the 2 cult leaders decided to take drastic measures. Di Mambro claimed that a newly born child was the Antichrist and the order murdered the whole child's family. Soon after, Jarrett and Mambro convinced the group that the end of the world was closer than expected and that they needed to start a new civilization on the planet orbiting Sirius early. Those who refused to poison themselves were shot or asphyxiated with bags and burns. In the night leading up to the mass suicide, the cult held a recreation of the Last Supper, acting it out. By the end of the interstellar rituals, 74 people had died by either murder or suicide. Number 3. Manson Family. One of, if not the most well-known cult in the world, the Manson family became infamous for the murder of famous Hollywood actress Sharon Tate. Charlie Manson, born in 1934, was a troubled child who bounced around the Midwest. When released from prison in 1967, Manson headed for California in hopes of becoming a famous musician. With the hippie movement in full effect, there were thousands of young people who flooded the area looking to create a new way of life. As an older figure in a crowd of young impressionable people, Manson amassed a small following of almost entirely women. In 1968, along with his Manson family, he headed to Los Angeles in pursuit of his music career. With his connection to Dennis Wilson of the Beach Boys, Manson met other music industry players and became obsessed with achieving stardom. Through Dennis Wilson, Manson made acquaintance with Terry Melcher, who was a well-known record producer. Melcher and his girlfriend, Candace Bergen at the time, lived at the famous 1050 Cielo Drive, the house that Sharon Tate would eventually rent with her husband, Roman Polanski. Manson, after presenting his musical talents to Melcher at the Spahn Ranch and getting nowhere, became fixated on violence. On the night of August 8, 1969, Manson family members Tex Watson, Patricia Krenwinkel, Susan Atkins, and Linda Kasabian drove to Tate and Polanski's home, which Polanski was out of town filming. The 8-month pregnant Tate, one of Hollywood's most promising up-and-coming actresses, was relaxing at home with friends Jay Sebring, Abigail Folger, and her boyfriend Wojciech Frykowski. None of them had any connections to Manson other than the fact that the house was previously owned by the man who Manson blamed for his music career's failure, Terry Melcher. Tate and all of her friends died a brutal and terrifying death of dozens of stab wounds. The very next night, the same members and Manson set out to kill more innocent people, and the LaBiancas were the unfortunate victims. It was largely agreed that the carefree lifestyle of 1960s LA was killed the morning after when the news of the murders spread like wildfire throughout the city. Number 2. Branch Davidians. Led by leader and so-called prophet David Koresh, the Branch Davidians were a commune headquartered at the Mount Carmel Center Ranch 13 miles northwest of Waco, Texas. Koresh began to lead the group in 1987 and had thrown most of the original teachings away in favor of prophecies of world collapse in the near future. Koresh had been stockpiling weapons, so after the ATF found out, they issued a warrant for his arrest and a warrant to inspect the compound for weapons. Gunfire broke out when the ATF went to the compound to serve the warrants, resulting in the deaths of 4 government agents and 6 Branch Davidians. Following the incident, the FBI launched a 51-day siege trying to coax the commune out without any more casualties. After little success, the FBI launched a tear gas attack on the compound to force them out, but in the minutes following, the entire Mount Carmel Center burst into flames. Refusing to come out even amidst the blaze, 76 Branch Davidians died that day, including 25 children, 2 pregnant women, and Koresh himself. Number 1. The People's Temple. Known to be the largest number of American civilian casualties until the 9/11 attacks in the World Trade Center, the People's Temple cult attracted thousands of members at the height of its popularity in the 1970s. Based out of San Francisco, California, a white minister named Jones had been preaching unconventional socialist and progressive ideas to an African American congregation called the People's Temple. By 1977, Jones had become paranoid by the media's constant probing of the group's suspicious activities and decided they should relocate to an agricultural settlement in Guyana, which he promptly named Jonestown. Concerned about the well-being of those in the settlement, U.S. Congressman Leo Ryan set out to visit the camp in November of 1978. After arriving and checking out the camp, Ryan was shot and killed along with 4 other people by Temple gunmen at the airstrip. In the hours following those murders, Jones instructed his followers to drink cyanide-laced punch, starting with the children. In total, more than 900 people died, including Jones, who was found to have a single gunshot wound to the head.